Hello, everyone. This is Jarvis S. Scott with What's Happening in Birmingham. Today, I have the honor and pleasure of being with Mr. David Sher, who is a publisher of CombatTown.com. Good afternoon, Mr. Sher.
Jarvis, thank you. I appreciate you having me here today.
Great. Thank you for taking time out your day. So, first question I really want to ask Mr. Sher is, what is CombatTown.com?
CombatTown is a blog that's published every week. It talks about how we can create a more prosperous Birmingham. And when I say Birmingham, I'm talking about a greater Birmingham.
Okay. Can you give the audience a little bit of your background, feedback, a little more information about you, yourself?
Well, I think that the way to understand, and this will probably help you understand why I'm publishing the blog, is that I'm a past chair of what was the Birmingham Regional Chamber of Commerce. It's now the Birmingham Business Alliance. I'm a past chair of well, it was Operation New Birmingham. It's now Rev Birmingham. And I'm a past chair of the City Action of Partnership, or CAP. And during that time, I had an opportunity year after year to visit other cities that seemed to be performing much better than the Birmingham region did. And so it became a big question in my mind. Birmingham is a Sun Belt city. Most of the major growing cities in the United States are in the Sun Belt. Why isn't Birmingham doing as well as everybody else? So I created this blog or internet site so that people could begin to have this discussion.
Okay. And it's been here since 2011, correct?
I've been doing it for almost 7 years.
Okay. And I always love Mr. Sher's website. He has very great articles, provocative titles, but it's the type of titles that it kind of draws you in. And one, you always have a start off sometimes with Mountain Brook, and I noticed on your website that gets the most page views and everything. Can you tell people like the history of this ongoing challenge we've been having? Because I read an article a while back. It was like a letter that the Atlanta mayor wrote back in the 1950s. And a lot of people didn't know this. Even there was a vote for Homewood and Mountain Brook to actually merge together. So can you tell people a little bit more about that?
Well, let's just kind of go back to why, in my opinion, let's get to the basics of why we seem to not be doing as well as other cities, because that was the big question. You have the city of Birmingham. It has about 210,000 people. You have metropolitan Birmingham, which is 7 counties, which is about 1.2 million people. So the city of Birmingham only represents 19% of our metropolitan area. So that less than 1 out of every 5 people in metropolitan Birmingham, Hoover, lives actually in the city of Birmingham. So you could have Moses as the mayor of Birmingham, but they only represent such a small portion of the total. They're kind of limited as to what they can do. Then you have Jefferson County. Jefferson County is made up of 35 separate municipalities, which all are competing with one another. And then you have 5 county commissioners that are all elected by district. So not any one of them has to answer or get voted on by all of Jefferson County. And then you have a state constitution that's out of date and doesn't allow for home rule. So even if you wanted to hold the county commissioners responsible, you couldn't, because many of the major decisions are made by the state legislature. So, Jarvis, assuming you decided one day that you wanted to get into politics and make a big difference here, there's no office to run for that has any kind of clout to get anything done. So everybody's off competing with one another, where we're competing against cities like Nashville or Jacksonville or Louisville. The county and the city is the same. So they don't have all this, everybody working against each other. They have a big plan to try to do the best what they can for it, which we can't figure out how to do here.
So you would say we got like organized chaos in a way.
Well, we have disorganized chaos.
Okay.
Actually what we have, because it only makes sense when the mayor of Mountain Brook wakes up every morning, he's going to say, what can I do that's best for Mountain Brook? And the mayor of Fairfield's going to do exactly the same. And you can't fault them for that. And all these municipalities have to be paid for and keep going. But there's just no entity that's looking out for the whole. And so what you end out is this real competition amongst one another. One of the trips that I went on was to Charlotte. And I've been to many others, but when you talk to the people in Charlotte or Nashville, they talk about competing with cities in Asia, or China or Europe. And when I come back here, it's a conversation on what we're going to do between Bessemer and Hoover. There's the competition, or Mountain Brook and Homewood. It's not what we're going to do to try to make everything better. So we've had virtually no job growth since 2000. And that's a shame, because that doesn't create prosperity. It didn't create an opportunity for people to be what they want to be.
And I'll be remiss to ask you, we only really have one Fortune 500 company that's headquarters here.
And that's Regions. And if something, at some point, it's not far-fetched to think that Regions could become part of something else or merge with another thing. And then one of our biggest employers we would lose. And then kind of where are we?
And also, so say for instance, if Regions left or a bigger company, I used to work at South Trust a couple of years ago, and one of the biggest, when you have a company that's headquartered here, is philanthropy. And describe how, like, when that company leaves, it all of a sudden takes away what local nonprofits get as far as like funding and things like that.
You know, you do have, when a new company comes in and takes over, they try to be is good to the community, but they're not going to be as good as if they were headquartered here. And if most of their execs, you know, the execs, it's not just the philanthropy that's involved. It's all the volunteer work that they do for the many different, organizations. And so consequently, you lose all of that. And then when you have young people who are looking to build careers here, the biggest jobs are not here. So what ultimately happens in many cases is children who would really like to maybe stay in Birmingham don't have any other option but to move to another community. And most of my friends, my peers, their children do not live here. If they had a business here, and their children may come into the business, other than that, the big jobs are usually someplace else.
Okay. So next question I'm going to ask you is, why, well, let me change it up and say, how would one government benefit the region?
Well, I mean, if you had one government, I mean, we could talk about lots of different things. First of all, and I'm not really proposing one government right now, because not that I don't think it's a good idea, because I think it is, but I don't think that people here are ready to accept that. And the reason I think that's true is many people perceive that if you have one government, you're going to have one school system. One school system is a deal killer, because people are just not going to give up their schools. We have 12 separate independent school districts just in Jefferson County alone. People are not going to give up their schools. So the solution that we find is not going to be to combine governments. And even though you can combine governments and not necessarily combine schools, people still are afraid of that. So I think what we have to do, the thing that we're concentrating on now, is to try to get the mayors to start working with one another. We have 35 separate mayors, but quite frankly, there's only probably about 6 or 8 that represent big enough cities to make a real big difference. If you could get the 6 of 8 of them, and of course we'd like to have all 35, to sit down and try to figure out what would be a good plan, what could we do better. And one of the things that we could do is we spend literally millions of dollars every year just trying to steal businesses from one city to the next, or to keep your business from not moving to another city. And so what happens is that, I'll give you a good example. You had Tom Williams Automotive, which used to be in Birmingham. Irondale gave millions of dollars in incentive for them to move to Irondale. Birmingham was not happy with that, and so at that particular time, you had a Walmart and a Sam's that were located in Irondale. So the city of Birmingham said, well, we'll give you millions of dollars for Sam's and Walmart to move back to Birmingham. Well, as it turned out, Walmart did move. They got an $11 million incentive, and Irondale lost the Walmart, but they kept the Sam's, which didn't have a happy ending, as what happened recently, which we'll talk about in a second. And so then Irondale was not happy, so they said, well, wait a minute, Trinity Hospital, we'll give you some incentives for you to leave Birmingham and come to Irondale. And the city of Birmingham says, no, we're not going to lose you. So they gave Trinity $55 million to stay in the city of Birmingham. Of course, they went out on 280 and became Grandview. So what I'm talking about today happens all the time. So, I figured that between $150 and $200 million have been spent over the past 20 years just paying businesses to not move from one side of town to the other or to getting them to move. This is $200 million that could have been used to recruit other businesses from out of state. It's money that could be used to help fight crime, for education, for public transportation, but it went to companies who are basically putting a gun to your head that says, you know, if you want me or if you need me, then this is what you want to do. And that's unfortunate for the taxpayers. And what happens is, any one example is the same, but let's take the hospital example for Trinity and Grandview. Trinity moves out to 280. Now, in metropolitan Birmingham, how many more hospitals did we have before that move? The same number of hospitals. How many more jobs did you have? Same number of jobs, but you're out $55 million. So there was no benefit overall, because all we did was, you know, it was that. We have, and then you have duplication of services. We have 13 separate 911 emergency call centers.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I read one of your articles. He was talking about depending on where you have your accident, who the dispatcher is going to be.
But that is just part of the problem. The fact that's obviously an important part, because you could end up somebody could have some real risk from having the wrong people show up or have them show up late. But each one of those has to be staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so you could do something like what Vestavia Hills did, which is they just outsourced it to another call center. And they've saved $3.8 million over the past 5 years, money that would just been totally wasted, that now they can use for other things in their budget. And you still have 13 other municipalities that are paying for those independently of one another. And we have 53 fire departments, 24 police departments, the sheriff's department, garbage trucks. Well, in the same neighborhoods, you'll see 3 different municipalities. The trucks are passing each other. Why don't we have one truck that goes into the... I mean, and this doesn't involve combining cities. It involves adult mayors to sit down and talk to one another and say, why are we doing this to ourselves? So the end result of all this is that we keep raising our taxes because we're wasting all this money. Homewood just raised their sales tax by 1%. Vestavia Hills just raised their sales tax by 1%. Hoover just raised their sales tax by 0.5%. Irondale, they lost Sam's, which was a huge portion of their budget. That's what ultimately happened with Sam's. And so what they had to do is they tried to have a property tax increase, but the citizens voted it down. So they had an occupational tax of 1% now that they're getting paid. So the solution is not let's save money, let's not work together, let's just raise our taxes. And people sit there like dummies and say, oh, that's okay. Until we're now paying 10% sales tax in most places now. When you purchase something now, take a minute and just take a look at that part you're paying in sales tax that you could have been using that money for something else. And they'll say it's only 1%, it's only 0.5%, but it's 0.5% more than it was. It's 1% more. They're nickel and diming us to death. So are we going to have 11 and 12% sales tax pretty soon? I think not. I think people are probably going to say that enough is enough. So hopefully that we can sit down and encourage our paid public officials to sit down and get together with one another and make decisions that make sense.
Yeah, so let me ask you this, though. Like we just said, that with sales tax revenue, that fluctuates. Because if you don't have any business, you can't really pull in no revenue.
Right. I mean, that's part of the other part of the problem, because the internet, cities are taking in less and less revenue from sales tax. So, but Alabama, the way the Alabama is set up, the Constitution is set up, cities need sales tax. That's the way they are. Other states don't have sales, are not as sales tax driven as we are here. And it's pretty obvious. The sales tax hit the people who can least afford it the most. And even worse, we're one of only a few states in the United States that fully tax groceries and prescription drugs. I mean, if you go to most every other state, there's either no sales tax on it or a reduced sales tax on it. We pay full freight on groceries. It's unfortunate. But again, I guess they need every penny they can get, so they're going to take it on groceries just like they take it from everything else.
Okay. One of the articles I read on your website, I love how you go and trace history from years ago and bring it back to now. You was speaking more about Homewood and Mountain Brook had opportunity back in the 50s to do this, and they all said no.
What happened is there was an effort by the city of Birmingham and the greater area to, back in, I guess late 60s, to have Homewood become a part of the city of Birmingham, and for Mountain Brook to become a part, so that it would all be the same. So there was a referendum that was done in Homewood, and it actually passed, which means that Homewood would have been a part of Birmingham. But the attorneys got involved, and they found some technicality to throw the election out. So they did the election over, and this time it was defeated, so Homewood didn't become a part of the city.
Okay.
Mountain Brook had the election after that, and they ended up making the same decision.
Okay.
And of course, it's really hard. To be totally transparent, this was all driven by race, because each wanted to have its own school system and not be a part of what was going on with integration at that time. And here's another thing where the Constitution and how our laws just worked against us. Or some people may think it worked for us. It just depends on what side you come on. But Alabama has a law that says that if a city has a population of 5,000 people or more, it can have its own school system.
Okay.
Georgia and most other states, it's all done county-wide. So in Georgia, there was not this big rush to to get all the cities to separate, because it wouldn't have made any difference. The school systems were still going to be county schools, period. Not here. Here we just have, and we just recently had a case where Gardendale tried to separate itself out too, but ended up the court wouldn't allow them to do it. But the reason that they can even do it in the first place is this law in Alabama that says if you have 5,000 people, you can have your own school system.
Okay. I think a lot of people didn't even know that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that if you really knew what Alabama, we talk a lot about public transportation. Why don't we have the public transportation that some other places have? Again, it's just set out by law that no money that's raised from gas revenue can go towards public transportation. Also, all has to go to roads and bridges. Other states get money from the state, which enables them to do so much more. But I mean, we could go through a list of everything we can't do here because of our Constitution or because of the ways things were originally organized, and it's really hard to get out from under that because everybody's so independent and looking out for their own needs that the big picture is often overlooked.
Okay. One comment, whenever I bring up your website all the time, is a lot of people say, well, why should I even care about what goes on in Birmingham, where I live in Hoover, I live in Mountain Brook? That doesn't affect me.
Yeah, well, people are just sort of kidding themselves about that. Let's just, when people tell me that, and I get a lot of comments from people that say, Mountain Brook would do just fine without Birmingham, or Hoover would just do fine without Birmingham. Well, the fact of the matter is, if for some reason Birmingham went away, all the suburbs would just evaporate. Most people people in Mountain Brook don't. Very few of them actually work or have their businesses in Mountain Brook. So first of all, the city is significantly important, and then the other part of this is that. So if Birmingham doesn't prosper, the suburbs have no chance to prosper. It just isn't going to happen. And some people just think, well, we don't need the city for anything. We don't have to we don't have to do anything with them. And the end result of all this is two things that are important to me, and one of the reasons that I published the blog is, one, it's really very difficult to grow a business in Birmingham, because if you're not growing population and you're not growing other businesses, the only way you can grow your business is to steal business away from somebody else, because you don't have any new business necessarily to get. And the second reason is we're losing our children and our grandchildren to other cities. Again, not because they don't want to live here. It's just they don't have the job opportunities here and they have to go someplace else. So we have really great suburbs with really good schools, and the children still have to go someplace else. So you as a parent or grandparent, you say, we have this great community, but I'm going to have to travel thousands of miles to see my children or grandchildren. And that's what, and nobody draws those two lines together and think they have anything to do with one another, but they do.
Okay. And then one thing I noticed on the your website, how much money actually the city of Mountain Brook, the people who live in Mountain Brook, donate for philanthropy and nonprofits a year.
People beat up on Mountain Brook, but I'm amazed. Of course, you've got a lot of money in Mountain Brook in the first place, okay? Mountain Brook people are so generous, both with their time and, I mean, a good example would say be United Way. United Way goes to try to help everybody. The United Way has a separate group of people. It's called the De Tocqueville Society. And it's people who give $10,000 a year or more to the United Way. Well, $10,000 is a lot of money, and that's not the only thing that people give. Well, our De Tocqueville Society, many of the people who live in Mountain Brook are members of the De Tocqueville Society. Our De Tocqueville Society is the fourth largest in number of people in the United States. Not fourth by population, fourth. We have more De Tocqueville Society members than New York or Los Angeles or Chicago. It's 700 and something. And so that's just one thing. But if you look at just about any charity of any type, you're going to find Mountain Brook people that are at the forefront of many of those things. And so I think it's totally unfair to necessarily say that people in Mountain Brook don't care. There's some people who don't care in Mountain Brook. There's some people who don't care in Birmingham. There's some people who don't care in Hoover. But Mountain Brook is very generous, and the people really should be appreciated and thanked. But again, those are the people who have the money. So, you know, people say, well, they should be doing that anyway, but they didn't have to, I guess, if they didn't want to.
Okay. Well, in the recent years with the growth of downtown, how do you think the perceptions of opinions have changed of Birmingham? Do you think some people still share those opinions, even if they see the development with Regents Field, you know, Uptown, and some more places?
I think it's been remarkable. We've always, our Birmingham region has always suffered from really very low self-esteem. I mean, to the embarrassing it was so bad. We can't do anything right. Nothing we do here will ever be successful. Well, that's been turned upside down by the success that we've had downtown with all the different projects. When I walk, I don't know how well you remember what it was like where Railroad Park is now, what it was like before Railroad Park. It was a trash bin where, you know, you would not feel safe walking around there. Now when you walk over in that area and you have apartment after apartment and restaurants and all of that, it's like you landed in a different planet. So I think one thing it's really done is it's raised our self-esteem and given us the feeling that we can be successful with doing things, and I think it's changed the perception of people outside of here. But we have to again, our biggest issue is trying to create jobs. And we can have the prettiest downtown in the world, but if you don't have the jobs here. But it does make it much more enticing for companies and others to come and be into Birmingham, because Birmingham's a really, really nice city. People oftentimes fault me for, you must not like Birmingham, or you're down on Birmingham. Well, if I was down on Birmingham, why would I be spending all this time trying to make Birmingham better? I mean, it's kind of illogical. And so Birmingham, in my opinion, might be one of the best places to live in the United States. It's just all the great things we have here, people take for granted. I mean, Birmingham, first of all, is really pretty. I live in Vestavia Hills. When you drive down the mountain towards Homewood on Highway 31 and you look out and see the valley, it's gorgeous. People from here don't say, well, gee, I didn't know it was so green. I didn't know it was going to be mountains and all that kind of stuff, so it's really pretty. People are very generous, as we've talked about a minute ago, and very helpful. If you or I were to walk out of this building and go out on the street and fall down or trip or something, you'd have 6 people rushing over to try to pick you up and help you. Trust me, you couldn't keep them from trying to help you. You hear stories of people in the Northeast is walking down some street and they fall in the street and somebody runs them over and nobody bothers to do anything.
Well, I was in New York one time. People walk so fast.
I mean, in downtown Birmingham to this day, I walk along and make eye contact with people, and we say hello to each other. Try that in one of these other cities. That isn't. You'd be, people would call the police on you. And it's easy to get around Birmingham. I know people say, well, I can call traffic and so forth. Try going to Atlanta or Nashville these days, or Austin. Birmingham's a 20-minute city. It's easy to get around, and people underestimate how much quality of life you gain from being able to not spend your whole life sitting in a car. And so, that's good. That's good. And so if you really looked at the important things of life and your quality of life, it's far better here than many other municipalities. We just need to kind of try to figure out how we can be a little bit more working together to get more jobs here. We don't have to be Atlanta. I don't think that would be what anybody really wants. But you wouldn't run your business with, I think I'll do the same this year as last year, maybe make a little less money.
Yeah.
You can't do that with a city either. You've got to have some growth in mind or you'll end up really going down.
Yes. So if you had to have a wish list, maybe let's say 2 or 3 things you would like to see within the next year as far as regional cooperation in some areas, what would you?
I would like to see us have the mayors get together and have some kind of formal arrangement where they could sit down with one another and start talking about how we can solve some problems together with one another. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that.
Okay.
If they can just find one thing to work together on and get success with it, then you could probably have item number 2 and item number 3 and get this mindset that we're all going to be better off if we work together than if we work against one another. Okay. I think that would be the number one thing that would be, it's an incremental improvement, but it is a step in the right direction.
Okay. One thing you did allude to earlier, and it was discussed on your website, but I love it how you eloquently answer it. People say, well, why does he care so much about Birmingham? He doesn't even live in Birmingham. Yeah. Your response is, well, Birmingham affects the whole region. And when I tell people, like a lot of times when you're from out of state, you say, I'm from Birmingham. You never say I'm from Mountain Brook, Homewood, Hoover, and things like that. Where's, as far as your website, you have guest bloggers. I know it's from time to time.
Every other week.
That chime in on different, so it's more than just yourself. For more information, how can they visit your website?
God, I'm so glad you asked. It's comebacktown.com. Comebacktown.com. You go there. Of course, I really would like you to consider to sign up for the newsletter. Okay. And it's easy to see there's a place to sign up for the newsletter. You don't have to give away a lot of information to ask you for your first name. Quite frankly, if you didn't give your first name, as long as you give the email, it doesn't make any difference. And the purpose of that is not necessarily for you to read every piece that's published on Comeback Town, but if we ever get an opportunity, a real opportunity to create some kind of groundswell of public support, some grassroots efforts to try to get something done, we have all these people who have signed up for the newspaper, and we literally have thousands of people signed up for the newsletter, who could get together and mobilize and try to get something done. I think that's a real opportunity to do something. And it's interesting to me because the email newsletter distribution list has grown, and it's grown every year since we've been doing it. And trust me, I know you didn't wake up this morning, none of your listeners or viewers woke up this morning and said, gee, I hope somebody sends me another email. So everybody who's on that email distribution list took it upon themselves to sign up themselves for it. And therefore, I know that they have a passion for Birmingham, would like to see better things for themselves and their family. So comebacktown.com, go to register, sign up for the email distribution list. You get an email once every other week. It's easy to opt out if it becomes a burden, but you're there in case we have an opportunity to do something. And also notice your content is also republished on AL.com. It's automatically republished every week on AL.com, and often it's republished by other people too. So the audience is pretty large, and so the thing that's so rewarding is that there are so many people that have a passion for our Birmingham region and want to see better things for themselves and their family, and are willing to do things to try to make that happen. Okay. Well, Mr. Sher, thank you for taking time out your day to talk about this very important topic.
And for more information, more interviews, please check out my website, what'shappeningbirmingham.com. Thank you all again and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.